Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Ken.
What's up, man? I'm so excited to be on. Thanks for having me, Monster Mash Ken. You can find me at Monster Mash Ken
That
on
was the
Twitter.
quickest plug. Like I didn't even get a hello. I didn't get a how you doing. Like, come on. Ken, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, man? Besides be like what's
Yeah.
Monster Mash about? You just threw that right at me.
Oh, Monster Mash. I've been doing podcasting for about 2 years now. I've really been into podcasting. I have a lot of friends in it and did guest shows and stuff. Started in the sports. Love football. I'm a big Raider fan, diehard Raider fan, and kind of got into podcasting that way. And I don't, um, everybody had these flashy names, and my daughter when she was younger, I'd always say she'd mash things up. She just comes and she wrecks everything. So it's like you're acting like a monster. You're mashing things up. So naturally, I took Monster Mash, and it also started my. I do custom action figures too, so it's Monster Mash Customs too. So then I created a company out of that. It's like a LLC and everything, and it kind of just took off from there. Um, I loved talking about horror movies, and hence the background where the scary things are. So it kind of flowed nice, like, oh, I'll just take that moniker on and whatnot, and I've got to meet some really great people. Via social media and whatnot. And yeah, that's just kind of stuck.
When you say custom action figures, what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking about like taking bits and pieces from different action figures and making them into one giant thing? Or more of like a more of painting, customizing that way, like when people make their own like role-playing game pieces?
A little bit of both. I do sculpting, molding, different parts, different pieces, ordering different pieces from you know different parts of the world. And they make in Asia they make a lot of different parts, a lot of cast and stuff like that. And I started doing this just for fun. I've always been a collector, big nerd, all the conventions and all that. I don't dress up or anything like that, not yet. But no, I just was always into that. And I remember when I was a little kid, I would just draw on my toys, my wrestling toys. I'd draw blood on them and stuff, right? And they never. I just wanted to do my own thing. So ever since I can remember, I started doing that. And then I started doing action figures. I got really into it. Started getting better and better and better. And now, like I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I got so busy with it that I had to start turning down people. Like I can't do it. I don't have time. I'm sorry.
What's the
So I had to.
individual time that has to get put into making one of those things too? You got a bunch of people coming up asking for like, hey, I want a customized action figures. Like, yeah, well, this process is probably a few weeks long of, I guess nonstop hours of being able to put in work to be able to create something that someone wants. I mean, you got to be careful with drawing blood on action figures though, because I did that in the fifth grade, and it was like you had to make a character of yourself, like
uh,
they had to have a certain hobby or something. Like a bunch of kids were drawing like like jewelry or something, be like he's a rapper or whatever. And then my kid was a skater. So I just drew the helmet and I drew the skateboard and everything. And then I was like, well, I fall a lot. So give him scabby knees. And then when they gave me the red little blood, little like gel thing, I just started squeezing it all over the character. I was like, he was hit by a bus. And my teacher was like, we're going to talk to your parents. And I was like, why? And they do that led down a whole rabbit hole of taking away video games, thinking that's what made them like, it's Grand Theft Auto. That's what's making them an aggressive, violent kid. I'm like, no, not at all. What? I'm a kid. You give me gel, I'm gonna squeeze the shit out of it. I still can't today write with a Sharpie properly. Every time I get it on my whatever, where you would get a blister and like in between on your middle finger.
That's hilarious, man. No, it's a good point. Even you just mentioned in school, like we had to do like projects in school, and I remember we had to like it was like this Greek. We had to talk about the ancient Greece, and I made like an action figure, like a toy, and it was like the teacher was blown away. I was like in fifth grade or some shit. I don't know,
They're
and everybody's
blaming
like,
Grand
"Whoa."
Theft Auto, and they're teaching us in ancient Greece about a dude being put into a metal bowl while they lit coals under him and just watched him cook alive. And I'm like, that maybe that's where it's coming from. It's not me running
It's
over hookers.
it's all about the system, man. You gotta you gotta do what you want.
Now, have you seen Willy's Wonderland?
I have not. I've heard good things, but actually last night, all over my social media, everybody's watching it, and I haven't checked it out yet.
I love. every movie I think everybody hates. Every time I say this is my favorite movie, people are like that movie's awful. So I convinced my buddy the other night to watch Willy's Wonderland, and he
Hmm.
was like, "Okay, let's watch it." After we got done with it, he goes, "That was a 5." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "It was
Wow.
amazing." The only critique I had was on the fight scenes, the monster, the scary parts of scenes. I think it's
Hmm.
important not to show you every like sometimes they can scare you without really being like showing a monster, showing a bunch of blood
Yeah.
gore. But they were too quick. Like they were gone in a minute. And I was like, "Yo, like you need to spend more time on this one avenue of like introducing the monster, having these battle scenes, not something where it's like for 35 minutes they're fighting one dude." And I'm like, "All right,
Yeah.
that's a fucking werewolf. Like, what is that movie, The Darkness, with the one chick where she's like has to fight werewolves and she has to fight vampires?
Oh, that's
Underworld.
Underworld. Yeah.
That fight scene went on for like an hour and a half. I was checking my watch, like, all right, look, I got places to go, people to meet.
You know, that's a really good point because I've noticed now that I watch a lot more of podcasts and stuff. I'm sorry, movies and fight scenes. I grew up watching fight scenes, and I love a good martial arts flick. But sometimes you just got to end it, man. And one of the, you know, what's a good story? I'll tell you this: where the scary things are. The podcast that I do with my co-host Muse. The way we met, she posted something about a fight scene, and I said the best fight scene in cinematic history is a movie called They Live, right? And it's with Roddy Piper, and he and David Keith, I believe his name is, throw down, and it's amazing. They're like brawling in this back alley. They're fighting like crazy people, and it's like what a real fight would be like. And it had substance. Like you knew somebody was gonna, they were getting hurt. And these other movies, like people don't get hurt. They're just throwing these punches. Like, what's all that training if you're not hurting anybody? You know. So I totally agree with you, man. Just end it.
I get it if you have like two, like I don't know if you ever seen the Forbidden Kingdom or whatever it was called with Jackie Chan
Oh
and
yeah,
there's
yeah.
Jet Li in there.
They brought them all together, right?
At that point, you're like, it's got to go for a good amount of time because you have Jackie Chan or Jet Li fighting each other. But then eventually it was like, it's about 45 minutes in. You're like, all right, even if it's a tie, like somebody just come in and break it up real quick. Cause then it's like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee.
Mm.
You watching it, you're like, I love Chuck Norris. He's been this meme, this gif of everything, but Bruce Lee's Bruce Lee. And it's like you don't know who to win, you don't know who to lose, and it's got to be done in a correct way. But then if you're like 2 hours into the movie, it's like Jason or what's his name? Jason
Jason
Segal.
Statham. Jason Statham.
No, we're not Statham.
Steven
Seagal.
Seagal.
Steven
Steven Seagal.
Seagal. That guy, dude. His movies, their fight scenes go on forever, and I'm like, all right, like I'm pretty sure like he's ripped out enough people's throats. I'm pretty sure this is throat 400, and we're only seeing him from the chin up. So I'm
Well,
like, it doesn't make sense.
cool thing about Steven Seagal, I read this article. It was a stunt man that did a lot of the stunts for a lot of the different actors and stuff, and he was being interviewed, and somebody asked him like, "Is there an actor that is a real badass, like who you would not want to fight?" And he said Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal would fuck you up, man. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then you talked about Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. I mean, I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. Watch Return of the Dragon, and they fought, and it was a very equal match. And it's one of Bruce Lee. I think it's one of Bruce Lee's best films. People go right to Enter the Dragon. Return of the Dragon, better than Enter the Dragon because Bruce Lee fights Chuck Norris, a young Chuck Norris, a very hairy Chuck Norris, if I may.
I'd agree with you on the Steven Seagal maybe 20 years ago. I don't see him doing it
Oh
now
yeah,
because
yeah.
if you see
Oh
him
yeah.
try and lift his foot up, it's like awkward as hell. Like he can barely get it like a foot off the ground. I think the one thing I just don't like about him is if you see interviews with him, is that he's that guy that knows everything. You know, like it's like it's ridiculous. There's I think he was teaching a bunch of cops like how to actually do like
Yeah.
self-defense tactics and stuff. I'm like, when did you have? He's like, I've been a cop for 55 years. You're like, what? And it's like he's just that type of guy. He sees like a monk sitting down somewhere. He's like, I've been studying the art of Tibet, and then he just goes off for something amount of years. It's like, what haven't you done? He goes, well, I did pilot a submarine for 36 years. You're like, where are you doing all these things? He's just that guy that has like a better story than you, but keeps adding on
He's
top
got to
of it.
one up you, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I got a cheeseburger. Well, I got a double cheeseburger.
Look, I can tell you, I can make the best bacon cheeseburger for the past 5 years. It's like, hold on a second. What's happening right now? I just asked, do you want Pepsi or Coke? Let me tell you all about the Coke and Pepsi industry right now. It's like, hold on a second. He's that guy.
All right, Steven, calm down, dude. All right. Everybody knows you're gonna one up us.
But it's like, for instance, like with Willy's Wonderland, like I thought it was a good movie, but I think it's the same thing with like Nick Cage. Steven Seagal's kind of in the same boat. Like they're actors that are good at one. They're like they have good movies, but it's
Hmm.
like they don't have this specific niche. I feel like there's a certain vibe that people look for when they're picking like an action star or a horror star or something. It's got to be like there are really good horror movies that have like a low cast. I would say like
Hmm.
maybe one famous person, but it's like a lot of unnamed people like that are trying to get their start, or you pick a horror movie that has like all the famous people in it, but there's just some actors where you're like they should get more credit, like they should have a better place in the industry. I think Nick Cage is completely underrated. I mean, that Willy's Wonderland thing, he made that movie great to me.
Well, I think he's having a renaissance in his career. I mean, at one point he was like a really hot actor, and he was doing all these great movies. And then he started doing, it just they started getting to be the same type character. But now I think he's just embraced his weirdness, and he's
Yeah.
he's he's just embracing who he is as an actor and as a person. And I love it, man. I'm here for it. I think like Color Out of Space was bananas. I loved it. But yeah, I gotta find time, and you and I were talking about doing this show for a bit, and it's hard to find time to a good hour and a half or 2 hours just to watch a movie. And when I'm doing it, I'm taking notes so I can review it. So it's just bananas, it really is. But I love it. I love talking movies, and I've seen so many. And it seems like you have too. I love the context.
I just like it when they make it a little bit more, I guess. It's like I've been trying my hardest to change my perspective. From when I was a kid, if you would have asked me like a horror movie, it would have been like, oh, it has to have scary monsters in it and stuff. But I really try and
Yeah.
listen to the story of it too. Like I used to love watching Signs when I was a kid. But then
Oh
I
yeah,
did
that's
a
a good
I
one.
did a guest appearance on my buddy's podcast where we talked about Signs specifically. So I was like, well, I haven't seen it in like 10 years. Let me rewatch it. And you start realizing like he's scaring the shit out of you without showing you all these major scenes and stuff. And yeah, people toss out the plot hole like they went to a planet that's filled with water. It's like, all right, dude, get over yourself real quick. Let's just look at the acting. I mean, the girl says, I see a monster outside my window. And he just like talking to her, everything's gonna be fine. He looks up and there was a monster outside the window on the roof. And it just like that, even that little subtle scare, there was no person being getting their head ripped off. Like most movies that are
Yeah.
horror movies now where a dude gets like split in half. You're like, Jesus, like, come
I
on.
watched probably one of my favorite movies so far that we watched. We've done 80 something episodes on where the scary things are here. And I've watched this one recently called Psycho Gorman. If you haven't watched this yet, I mean, I grew up, in the late 80s, 90s, and, it's all about like Power Rangers and whatnot. And this movie is bananas. It's so funny and it's gory and it's about a monster, and he's on Earth, and this little girl controls him, and the little girl is so sassy, and he wants to kill everybody, but she's like got this little amulet, and she kind of controls him, and he has to do what she says. So Psycho Gorman, I'm gonna put like all my efforts into everybody watching this film because I think it's so rad, and it's got a really good soundtrack. Yeah, and it's enjoyable. It's a little corny, but it's funny, and it's getting a lot of steam right now. I think you should definitely check that out.
I just like how I want to see something I have not seen before. Like I think that's why I liked Willy's Wonderland so much was like it
Hmm.
was like a Five Nights at Freddy's style, but it was like they used to have really good horror movie storylines. Like there's an old I can't remember the name of it. There was a movie where like it was a Native American girl on an airplane turned into a werewolf. And then they were
Oh,
stuck on this plane with a fucking werewolf. And it was like in the 80s style movies, like back when like Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. And it was like you're watching this, you're like, that is it's not the best. Let me tell you, it's not the best. They did like you look at a lot of those movies, you're like, yeah, this is way different than how it is today. But
yeah.
something with that idea and that concept would be great for right now. Like just being able to see like a werewolf on an airplane, you have nowhere to go. You can't open up the doors, you can't escape. That is so, and then you also have to make sure it doesn't destroy the airplane because then you're dead. And it's like that whole concept is amazing.
Hmm. No, I've never heard of it. I'm actually curious what that is. I mean, I've snakes on a plane, exorcism at 10,000 or 20,000 feet, whatever. I've there's all these different movies that take place on airplanes, but I've never heard of I don't know what that is, and I'm stumped. I gotta look it up, man. Werewolf on an airplane.
There
I'm
was
gonna check it out.
There was that one, and then there's another plot where the pilots ended up turning into zombies halfway through the flight. Like they're before the flight, they're feeling sick. One of them's under the weather. Then as like they're flying up in the air about an hour in, the one's like, I'm gonna take a nap for a little bit, and they got a co-pilot in there. She's like, yeah, go ahead. Dude dies, turns into a zombie, and then infects the other pilots, and the plane starts rattling and everything. Everybody's like, "What's going on?" They open up the cockpit. Next thing you know, zombies are coming out, and
What?
it's like these the movie, like when you're watching it, it's like, oh my god, like this is kind of really cheesy, but it's like it's a really good concept for a movie, which is why like I'm a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan, for instance, just on
Mhm.
the concept of like, his movies might have that twist ending that people are like, oh, another twist ending, but it's like it's awesome as shit because it's something that's keeping you off track of what the normal pace of everything is. You watch a spider movie, you're just some dude's going to come in with a flamethrower, burn all the spiders. That's common sense. We've seen it before. It hasn't been something new.
Yeah.
Godzilla versus King Kong. That might be a horror movie depending on how the ending happens. If Kong loses, I'm like, all right, come on, dude. Like,
Well, we spoke about that earlier. Like with like you get these iconic stars. Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, or Jet Li and Jackie Chan. Now we're talking about Godzilla and King Kong, two of the big monsters. Everybody knows who they are, and I hope they don't screw this up. They gotta get. I hope they make a winner. I hope they don't like fight each other. Then they're
that's what
like,
they're going to
oh,
do.
we gotta now something else is coming. We gotta join, and we gotta. I want to see them kill each other, man. Like what was that? Batman versus Superman. Like. I was enjoying it when Batman was kicking the shit out of. Sorry, am I allowed to cuss on your
Yeah,
show?
I've done it 3 times already.
um, when Batman's kicking the shit out of Superman. I was digging it, and I've read those comics, and that's how it should have been. But then, like, oh, it's gonna be buddy buddy now. We got the moms are the same name, so whatever. But yeah, I want to see I want to see violence, man. I want to see somebody get killed or their ass beat. That's the good guy. Or if there's a anti-hero type thing, Daredevil and Punisher, that was cool. They beat the crap out of each other. So
Yeah, but they gotta please an audience, and if you have
they got
something as big as Godzilla and King Kong, you're gonna have fanboys on either side. Like my buddy's like, obviously, like Godzilla's gonna win. He shoots like a electric beam. I'm like, yeah, but Kong's monkey, so he's smart. Like he has
yeah.
adaptive skills. Like you see him pick up in the trailer that giant skyscraper thing, and it shoots the beam right at him. He catches it with the beam, and it hits Godzilla with it. I'm like, yo, this is like I like Pacific Rim, like that style,
Yeah.
like giant monsters fighting city scenes, but it's going to be really hard to end it on a note where everybody's going to be happy unless they both
Yeah.
accidentally kill each other. Like it's a tie or whatever, they both die, or they both fight and then they start finding a different enemy to go after where it's like, all
Yeah.
right, now we're going to destroy this thing and then we're just going to walk away from each other. But it's so hard because there's that directors want to please both audience members or please every person possible.
Well, after interviewing so many, directors and writers and stuff, and I've learned that, the reason why I like talking indie film is because you get more independence and you get to do what you want to do. You write the film and you're creating the film that you wrote. But when you go into these bigger productions, you have to, like Disney, for instance, they have to abide by these rules. Well, we can't have this, we can't have that, we can't have that. You got it. Can we do this? I was like, but that's not what I wrote. Like, this is my, So I dig indie film. I watched this film on Shudder the other day called The Queen of Black Magic, and it was an Indonesian film. It was all dubbed, and the one thing that you don't see in the States with movies is kids getting killed or hurt. In this movie, oh mama, it was hardcore. I mean, kids were getting their heads beaten in and bugs crawling. It was bananas. And I asked the director, like, do you not get in trouble for this? And he goes, I knew I was going to draw some heat, but we did it anyway. And look what it turned out to be. So it's weird that big production companies have to. You're right. They have to gear towards a certain audience, and they want to make money, and that's why they keep vomiting the same stuff out. Like, how many times are we going to see the Batman story or Spider-Man story or Superman story? Like every 10 years, it's something the same movie. It's just a different actor. It's just out of control.
It's called you ride the horse till it's dead and then you keep on riding. But
I
that's
suppose.
that's interesting what you said about like them killing kids in like an Indonesian film or something on the concept of like why does it we know it's a movie. Why is it so like abrasive to our eyes if we see a kid get killed on screen or something? Like if a kid gets okay, Pet Cemetery, for instance, when the
Oh
little
God.
boy runs out into the road,
Oh
I was a kid when I saw that, but like
yeah.
looking back on it as a parent, like if like from a parent's perspective, that would trash me. So I understand the whole point of burying your kid. You want him to come back and he turns into this devil
Hmm.
and then you can't kill him. Like as
Yeah.
a kid, I was like, kill that little motherfucker. Like it doesn't matter. But as an adult, like you realize like how hard it is for you to get to that point, especially you work so hard to bring him back. And even though he's not the same, it's the same face. It's this, but when you see that shoe, like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like We need
That
movie.
that scene ruined me too, man. Like I always talk about it. That's like the worst scene in all of movie history. Like, and he's running as fast as he can. But he should have been a better dad and watching his damn kid.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that was the
No, it
good
was
sides of
horrible.
that.
It was horrible, and I hate that. Oh man, I mean, I'm a father myself, and just oh man, of that scene is horrible. And I can't think of the actor's name. He was, I think he actually helped out in one of your M. Night Shyamalan movies too as a production. But Miko something. I can't remember the kid's name. But God, ruined me too. The truck is coming. Everybody, watch out, okay, and
Well, a lot of
dead.
it's like they look at the fear or whatever is the scariest thing for back then. Like back then, it was like your kid running out into the middle of the road and getting hit by a car. Nowadays, it's like it's if your kid sees a tweet on Twitter or something and then kills himself. Like
It's
there's
soft.
a new movie that came out just last year with a past guest who they did a independent film or whatever, but it was about the evil of social media. Like it was like this ghost in the social media, kind of like the one we all see was Unknown or whatever it was called. It was like
Oh
a
yeah,
twist on that, but it was more on attacking the mental health side of things. And that's people's fears now. Like we get to see them in the movies that get created now. They did the COVID movie. A bunch of people are like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, like, because we're still not through this. But it
yeah.
just shows how our fears kind of changes. Back in the day, being scared of werewolves, being scared of vampires, being scared of like your kid being abducted. So you by a fucking guy who's a clown or something with a red balloon out of a sewer. Like it's this besides it being remade today, our fears have kind of changed, and it's interesting to see what they like tap into, like a leaky faucet or something. Like which one is like, where's the source here? Where should I mine this vein? What's going to get more people upset? I think it deals a lot with mental health, man. I saw it with The Visit. Everyone in the theater when I went to go see The Visit, and they saw when the grandparents were mentally insane, it wasn't their actual grandparents. You start to see people like, oh my God, because they probably know somebody with an issue, or they came across somebody in their life that has an issue like that. And it was like, yes, this is a new fear aspect, something we're all being more aware to. When back in the day, the Omen or whatever it was, that little fucking devil kid,
Yeah.
that was the only time you wanted a kid to die. You were like, when that kid was riding around
Damien.
on his scooter or whatever, and he
Yeah.
pushes that mom off the fucking top of the staircase or whatever. I'm like, you wanted that kid to die. But now it's like, people don't want to see it because it's not really, I mean, yeah, it's still kind of a fear, but there's other things we're more worried about, people taking their own lives, an infectious disease, something like that. I was like, yeah, let's find what that new vein is nowadays and see if we can create a movie on it.
No, I mean you hit a lot of subjects there. I mean the internet. I mean, how often are we on the internet? I just got a alert on my phone on my screen time. I was up 10% from last week, whatever that means. But I mean, our lives, especially right now during COVID, we are on the internet and we interact. What if you brought me on the show and I'm being a dick to you, and I'm like, you shouldn't have a podcast or something like that. And then it kind of like you take that home with you. And people escape
I'd cry.
reality.
I'd cry too.
I would never say that to anybody, but I never say it on live at least. But I think that the internet shouldn't be a place for hate. And I think I call them screen berets or keyboard commandos. That people that they say things to you behind the screen, but if somebody ever said that to my face, I'd stomp them out. Like you're not gonna say that to my face. You're not gonna. If I tweet that I like a certain movie, like we were just talking about, like we get bashed on with like bad movies. I like some bad movies, and if I tweet that, it's like, oh, you're an idiot. You like that movie? I'm like, I'm not an idiot because I like something. You're gonna bash me, but I agree because it's a subject right now, and I'm thinking about my kids when they start school, and they're really young. They haven't really got their kindergarten, whatever. But kids are mean, man. Kids are mean, and they're mean on social media, and social media can destroy somebody's career. I'm starting to build a good following and whatnot, and I've gotten into some beef with some people that had a lot. I had this one woman tell me that all it takes is for me to tweet one thing about you and you're ruined.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck you, you goddamn cunt. Sorry.
No,
But
it's fine. I've had Australia people on. That's their word of
yeah,
choice whenever they choose to curse. So
I just I just can't believe these people, man. And like nobody knows you outside. Like you walk down the street, they're not gonna know you. Oh, you're that Twitter follower. No, probably not. You're a little avatar. That's all you are.
well,
And you,
it,
you lose your account. That's it. But I hate social media so
uh,
much. I really
look,
do.
I post in ghosts. So the only time I'm ever on social
Posting
media
goes.
is when I'm actually talking to someone like a guest or something. But it is, I think there's one of two ways. One, it's a community issue. It's like it shouldn't be as free as it is. Mostly on the aspect of like you can get banned for anything, you get censored for anything. People want to say censorship doesn't exist, cancel culture doesn't exist. It does, but they have the right to as well because it
Yeah.
is privately owned. I think it needs to be a more of a community opening. But here's the issue is it also is a place for mental health. Like people that have severe mental health issues, people that aren't talking to other people on a daily basis, aren't doing things that are positive in their life. They look for negativity throughout social media. How
Yeah.
many times do you come across a certain post, somebody is crapping or throwing in their opinion on something, then it's an argument and you're just scrolling through the little comments back and forth like, oh, look at this. It's like, let's see this fight going on. Oh, he got him there with that. Oh, he got him there with that. It's a freaking like just a bunch of like, armchair quarterbacks, whatever, talking about it the next day. They keep it going long after it's done. I saw a tweet that a person had put up like a week and a half ago, and some dude had just discovered it and started going through like, yeah, fuck this guy, fuck this. And dude's like,
Yeah.
we cleared that beef 4 hours after that tweet was posted. Like it's just up there now. But now you're commenting on something from 2 weeks ago, and he goes, "Well,
I
it's like,
missed
yeah,
out. I missed out, so I'm
yeah."
back now.
Which it's kind of
That's
sucks because especially if your kids are growing up with it today, I think what's important is that we maybe teach a social media class, like the implications of it. Because when you're a kid, you type something you really don't understand. Like the hardest thing for me, I don't have kids, but
mm-hmm.
I watched a video where a dad lost his 12-year-old son
Mm,
because his son took his own life, all because he was playing video games and he broke his TV. Now the
mm,
kid didn't know that 2 days later was his birthday party, but they got him a TV for his birthday. So all he had to do was wait 2 days, but he was so upset that these people online were like saying your mom and all this other types of crap and then posting certain things on their accounts about this kid's profile that kid went into his closet and hung a belt around his neck and killed himself. And I was watching this video as his dad was crying and explaining. He's like, I just want to let you know I love you. And it was so emotional. I don't have kids, so for me to be able to understand that perspective, it was like I need to figure out, because I've been in that situation as a kid where I've gotten pissed off at a screen. I've gotten that, like, you
yeah.
get addicted to your Xbox because it's the only thing that's there when somebody isn't, you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
becomes this new connection. Same thing with food with some people. And it's like watching that, I was like, I could relate. Like, imagine that. Like, how many times I was just so pissed off, I wanted to throw my Xbox out the fucking window. Well, this
Yeah.
kid wanted to throw himself out of a window. And it's like, you start seeing that and you realize, oh, this is an addictive thing. You need to take breaks. You need to have your time. You need to get away and you need to understand that like
Absolutely.
people get so involved with it, they don't understand the repercussions of it all. So it's like that's why I want that to be taught in school. Like kids should know, hey, calling that dude's an asshole might feel funny, might do this, but unless you're tweeting at a major fast food chain, shut the fuck up. Like, you know what I mean?
No, it's a good point. Like, and there's a lot of things that should be taught in school, like how to manage bank account or your credit, how to buy a house. What are you going to do with that? I mean, kids today, they're not going to learn these skills. And right now we are in an internet world and the internet is mean. There's mean people and you bring up a good point. It's like when I was a kid in school and there was a fight, everybody would go watch the fight. Oh, Ken is going to fight this guy at 12 at the behind the building. Everybody knew about it. I don't know how the teachers never knew about it, but all the kids knew
They
about
didn't
it. And
care, bro. That's what it
they're like,
was.
"Oh, let those little shits beat the shit out of each other." They probably watched it on the
I
camera a
had
little bit,
there was a giant fight in my school, and I watched a teacher walk out of his classroom, see all the kids huddle up in a circle, and just turn right back around and go right back into his room.
It's like ain't my problem, man. I
Yeah.
don't blame them, man. But no, I think you're right. Like kids need to know, like words hurt, and words hurt when you don't know how to. There's brave kids out there too that can cap back. Just as when you see it online when you're playing. I play Madden, I play 2K or whatever, and you got to be strong, or you just shut it off and you play. If you can cap back on people, it makes it fun. But you got to learn to turn it off. When you turn off your screen, just leave it at home. And I know a lot of people that vent online or they whatever. You open yourself up. You open yourself up to be taunted or to be made fun of. I never like I got bad days, but I'm not gonna go tweet like, oh my god, whatever. I don't need sympathy from other people because some people aren't. They're not like that, and they're gonna make fun of you more or less. And for the younger generation, they're not adults. Your mind works differently. They just got to learn to turn it off and turn off the screen and leave it. Don't get involved in pointless arguments. My opinion of one thing may not be your opinion of one thing, and I'm not going to fight with you about it because you don't agree, and that's the problem. People just are trying to push their opinions on people, like, why don't you agree with me? You're wrong. You're an idiot because you don't agree with me. And then it turns into hurtful words. So I'm all about just spreading good vibes and educating on great movies and sports or whatever. Just keep the negativity off social media. I mean, I always like making fun of people, like I don't know, politics is a hot topic, and I like
Yeah.
making fun. I like agitating people a little bit, but yeah, it's just all in good fun.
I just tell like I sometimes people bring up politics. I'm like, the best thing to do is like I just want people to understand like whoever's appointed, just understand that they're not, they're people. They're gonna make mistakes and do crazy shit. And they go, "What do you mean?" And I tweeted an article this morning. There's a mayor of DC that got her there's a videotape of him smoking crack. And there was an interview with them, and they go, "Well, we got a video of you smoking crack." And he got reelected too. So like people voted him for him again after that incident. But he was like, nobody knows what's in that pipe. And I'm like, what? What are you saying? Nobody knows what's in that pipe. That's like a thinly veiled thing. His name is Marion Barry or Marion Barry. Got arrested for smoking crack and they reelected him. And I'm like, just so you know, when it comes to politics, when it comes to anything on social media, like don't say it's fake news. Don't say it's this because it probably is true. Most of the time it is like that. Same thing like when I reached out to you, for instance,
Yeah,
there's about a 90% thought in your head that was like, why is this person choosing me? Why? What did I say? What did I do? What is this? It all becomes like, did I post something that's offensive to somebody? And it becomes like this, I need to search, make sure this person's like credible, and then I'll get back to him on it. And it happens with everybody. It's because you don't know what to trust in social media anymore because everybody's like multiple personalities. Family Guy even made a joke on it when he was like, "Peter, what are you going to do?" And he goes, "I'm going to make a vague but somewhat sad post on Facebook and have a bunch of people ask me what's wrong. And I'll just put a different asterisk or a emoji so people can sense that I'm upset." And he just goes on there. He goes, "Today was a rough day." And then some comments, "What happened?" And everyone's commenting, "Are you okay? What happened? What happened?" And he just puts a sad face. And it's like, just leave it ominous. And he just walks away from the computer. So everybody's worried about him. I'm like, that happens today because I feel like people look to, your thousands of followers, your hundreds and
yeah.
thousands of followers as like people that actually want to know you, want to know who you are. They might just follow you just to forget they even follow you. I'm like, it's trying to create real connections with people that are just looking at the stuff you post and liking it. And then they don't actually ask you how your day's going, but it's like trying to find validation. It's a weird mix. If somebody made a movie on it, they could fucking go many different avenues with it.
No, I agree, and I've learned the hard way because when I first started, one of the shows I did, I got a big rush of followers, and I thought, people get in their mind like, oh, I've got this many followers, I'm somebody. You're not really anybody, but I learned to weed out the bad ones, the negative ones, and that mute button works miracles. Mute people, unfollow if you need to, but I keep my circle really close of the people I communicate with, and I don't tell a lot of people. I had one guy blow up on me. We were really good friends. We talk, and we actually met at one of a football game, a football event. We met one time. We were hanging out, and I had a guest come on the show on one of my sports shows, and he hated this guest for some reason. I don't know why, but he hated him, and he was texting me, just blowing me up, like, "I fuck your show and you and blah blah blah." He went after my co-host, and it turned out to be this big thing. And it realized, like, dude, you're a crackhead. Like, you are on drugs. I mean, he was on drugs, but
Yeah.
like, something was wrong with you, like, because I had a guest that you didn't like. And I learned the hard way: don't tell anybody anything. And if you got a bad feeling about somebody that you're hanging out with online or you're talking to, just it's probably true. So keep your friends close, man. There's good people out there, and I've met some like 5 or 6 really, really, really great people. And out of the several thousand people that follow or whatever on Facebook and Twitter and the shows and whatever, but the good ones. Keep the good ones close, and just it's all about positivity. Man,
There's a clue you can get in their social media profile picture. Whenever I see one where it's like someone doing like a funky face, like duck face kind of thing, or if they're doing something where they have a filter in their photo, like they're like a Snapchat filter or something with like bunny ears or something like
yeah,
that, my brain immediately goes mental health.
yeah,
And let me tell you something. I've been pretty dead on right because you got to understand, I reach out to a lot of people every single day. So I'm
mm,
filtering through. And the only time I've ever had bad interaction is if I wasn't paying attention because I'll just hit follow, 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 and then see what the return is. And then if I get a
yeah,
return is when I usually check out their stuff and then reach back out. But I mean, I've gotten that mistake before where I had someone, blow up on me. I've had people blow up on me, not even about me, about my guests. Somebody
Yeah.
commented
Okay.
like on it's happened more than once. One kid I found through a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and he was a Scientologist. So I was like, I found you through Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't do this show to make people look bad. So I have to ask from like a viewer perspective, if I was listening and you just mentioned Scientology, let me
Hmm.
know a little bit about Scientology. Like, why did you get into it? And then we talked about that for a second. Then we moved on to something else. But then some dude was on my podcast and he was like a state away from me because you're in Jersey. I'm in Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah.
This guy was in Delaware. So his twin brother got arrested for like murder, and
Wow.
it was like 20 years ago. So I was talking to him. I found him through like his DJ stuff, and we were talking about DJing and all that stuff. And then somebody commented and said, "How could you have this person on there? They're a murderer." And they started lighting me up with all these things. I start messaging this guy. I'm like, "Yo, how much of this is what she's saying is true? Like, is oh, it's your brother?" Then I learned the situation. I did all my research on it and all stuff too. I was like, you can't blame me for having him on there. We didn't even talk about that. We were talking about music and like, what's his favorite artist? Kiss, all these other types of things. We went down a whole different avenue. But that person was like, no, you're evil because you're talking to someone who's evil. I'm like, yo, if you give a person a chance to interview Bill Cosby, they're gonna
You're
fucking
gonna do
interview
it.
Bill Cosby.
I interviewed somebody very controversial. It was my football team, and it was I got a lot of flack for it, man. People didn't like this guy, and I wanted to ask him I asked him hard questions about stuff, and he answered them, and it was really, it was like one of the most listened to shows that I had. But people like controversy, and if you don't want to, like, okay, so you brought this guest on, and why would you bring that person on? Like, well, don't listen to it. It has nothing to do with you. It's not a shot at you. I get, several thousand listeners. Like, I'm not pointing at you like, oh, I'm going to piss you off with this one, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, I'm getting an opportunity to interview the quote unquote Bill Cosbys of the world or whatever. That's awesome. It's out of control. People get so offended on things that have nothing to do with you.
I don't even think about my show's aspect when it happens. I look at the person who's the guest because, like, if you dislike an episode of mine, it's like you're disliking my guest. So I'm like, I don't want. What I did in the beginning was I took off. I mean, not the views, but I took off the likes,
Mhm.
all those things, and I always usually make sure that nobody can comment, only because when I when I'm doing an episode with someone, a lot of times it's not podcasters, it's other just normal people and stuff
Yeah.
too. So I've had grandparents on, I've had their kids on, I've had three different generations on my podcast. And
Wow.
when they go that they go, thank you. Like, I got to show my family, got to show this. I'm like, that's awesome. But when they look at it and they see dislikes and stuff because maybe they had a stutter or maybe their connection was bad, that hurts them. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm taking all that off. Like, I don't want to see analytics. I'm legit out here to do these because I enjoy whoever the person is that I'm talking to on it. So I
Yeah.
get my attention and everything. It's like, I, I, I'm not going to be Joe Rogan. I don't give a shit. I don't want any of that. But my knowledge has enhanced, much like yours probably has. You get to talk to people that direct movies, direct these things where if you wouldn't have even started the show, you might not even had the chance to be able to talk to.
No, you're right. And one thing that I always try to keep in mind, it's not about numbers. Obviously, if I'm getting like 10 listens, I'm gonna stop. But consistently. But we've been very blessed with our numbers, and we're keep climbing and climbing, and to see where we're listened to at and different locations. But one thing that I've always kept in mind, and I have this guy that I look up to. He's a podcaster, and he's just amazing. I'm just gonna shout him out. His name is Murph. You can find him at Raiders Fan Radio. I got to meet him in person. We talked for a while. He's a very humble guy, but he's just really, really, really good at podcasting. And he told me one thing that I always keep with me on podcasting. Like, when it stops being fun, when you stop making it about, when you make it about a business, or you're making it about bringing money, it's not fun anymore. There's no point in doing it. So you got to keep having fun and find new ways to have fun. And that's why I do these shows, is because I have a good time. I drink a beer, we're talking, we're joking around, and you get with good people that can, if you're working with somebody that can't hold the conversation with you and you're trying to pull teeth, it's like, it's not fun. But yeah, I love it. I think podcasting is just, it's great. It's like a buffet. You go on your Apple iTunes or whatever, and like, what do I want to listen to today? And every now and then you hit gold and you listen to a great podcast. And I'm hoping that this show, takes off for you and somebody finds it, because it's fun just to hear about different perspectives. And we just kind of talked about nothing the whole time, but it was all about something at the same time.
Yeah. What's interesting about podcasts is like, yeah, there's a bunch of different flavors out there. And then now, like, you see a lot of them come across like true crime or something like that,
Oh
but
yeah.
they get even more niche than that. Like, we're going to match an ice cream flavor up to this serial killer. You're like, I did not think of that guy as a Rocky Mountain or road, whatever it is, Rocky Road. I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
Rocky
it's
Road ice cream
these
guy.
things get
The
like
Rocky Road killer.
yeah, like these things get specifically niche. It's like, what would you say Ted Bundy? Ted Bundy's more of a Sherbert. It's like, why? It's like, because Sherbert's dangerous. You're like, fucking, where are you getting your information from? Like, they get really, really niche. That's why you get to see, like, it's just a creative outlet for people and stuff too. But like, man, you'll come across some that are like, because it is a game kind of. So
Hmm.
like a lot of people look at it like the listener type thing. They always want to go and try and get more listeners by taking your listeners or turning it into a competition. I'm like, yo, it's a free flow. It's an era of creativity for a lot of people. So it hits this point where it's like, you got to just let someone create their thing and you got to worry about yourself in a way.
No, absolutely. And I think supporting each other, and as podcasters, because we are putting ourselves out there. um it's just about support, and if you don't like somebody's show, just don't listen to it, or don't give them constructive feedback, like, hey, I thought that there was a dog barking in the background, during your show. It's kind of, I don't know if anybody wants to hear that.
I always flow
So,
with it. I'm like, yeah, like obviously your dog's really interested in my question, but then you just
oh,
go with it.
when I first started the show, like, it's so bad. I don't a
The
couple
cell
show.
phone was going off. I was going to mention the phone.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't hear it because sometimes you have this, but some ladies fire alarm was going off. The battery needed to be changed. The whole episode. It was a really good interview. I'm like, God damn it, please. And it's hard to edit that out, but I feel bad for the listeners, because I'm like, what do I do here? Like, do I try to edit that out? And every like, 10 seconds there's like a, I try to mute it. So it just doesn't make any sense.
I
But you can't control it. It is
Yeah,
what it is.
I rarely edit. I had one where because I do the one-on-ones, and if the co-host or something wants to come on, they could go on separate, and then I'll do them both
Hmm.
at like another time or something. But dude was talking, and then all I hear is a sneeze from like the side, and I'm like, "Bless you," like really loud. And he didn't have his headphones in, so she heard it. She goes, "Thank you," just out of the side, and I'm like, "That's the best stuff." Is like if you're just like randomly like you just
Unscripted.
yeah, I'm like it's because if you pause it, if you try and do that, then it can mess up a flow. And I'm like the easiest thing and also the hardest thing is trying to find a flow to a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's really easy if both parties are willing to accept it. It's just like a rapport back and forth. When it becomes this thing, like you were saying, it gets like pulling teeth. You probably
Yeah.
know when you're talking to a director, it could be your favorite director. I've had my favorite comedians on here, people that are like, lined up to get on here. And
Uh,
then it's like so bland. I'm like, what the it's not
it,
me. It's you. It's you doing this to me.
Have you ever asked a question that you regretted asking, or have you ever got like scolded? Because we've had that before.
You've got scolded at a question.
Well, not me, but I gotta make fun of my co-host. She's gonna kill me. I always make fun of her, but we had this. Do you know who Mel Brooks is? You know who Mel Brooks.
Yes. Yeah, I know Bill
So,
Brooks.
well, we had his son on, and he's a writer, and he was not very. He was kind of grumpy in his own way, and Max Brooks, and he wrote World War Z,
Yeah.
and my co-host asked him, how was it, growing up with, your dad being Mel Brooks, and he goes, well, how was it growing up with your dad? It's the same thing. Like, it
Wow,
was just
that's a
like, what do you
deep
mean?
answer.
Like, what do you mean? Like, it's just growing up with your dad. Like, he took me to work. That was it. Like, what are you asking me? Like, he was being such a dick about it. And oh man, and I was really appreciative to get him on my show, but I was like, oh my, and I wanted to jump in, but I was like, then I was enjoying it, watching my co-host get roasted for a second because I was giving her shit after. But we get moments too where one time she asked a really good question about uh, there's this movie called God damn it, what's it called? Anyway, we asked the guest from the movie a question about how does it feel to know that your movie's doing so well, and where it came from. It got quiet. I thought something was wrong with the audio, but he got quiet. He looked down, and it was just like, I was like, hey, are you there? And he was crying. He started crying, and he was so thankful. He's like, man, it's just like, you guys don't even know. It's so amazing just to be part of a movie that you didn't think was going to take off, and now it's like one of the most popular movies, and I'm so blessed. And it was just like, it was a real moment. So you get real moments from people. I had one woman who was just getting high the whole time on the show, and it was hilarious. Sadie Katz, man, she's gorgeous. And she started flirting with me. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to the left field. But it's so fun connecting with just people from literally all over the world. And you hear their personal stories, not just about the movies or whatever. But I ask them, like, what's your favorite food? And then it just goes on from there or whatever, and it's so great. I love podcasting.
It feels nice when that I guess that tension breaks after the first couple
Yeah.
of minutes where it's like starting to get into a flow. Like I won't want to say his name, but like I stopped getting famous people after this person because eventually I was like, man, even when I'm getting the famous people, the people I got my favorite singer on, favorite comedians
Mm,
on, they're
really?
they're fun, but it's a lot of question based stuff. It hurts the conversation style aspect that I like to go for. And I remember trying to get this guy on this podcast, Johnny Pepperton. I don't know if you know who he is. But after a while, he left me like cold for a couple of months, like didn't message me back or anything. He missed out on 3 different meetings. I was like, I'm done, dude. I ain't doing this all day. You're not that much of an actor to me where I was like, oh, I was like, Son of Zorn, let's talk to him, that type of deal.
Okay.
Then he reaches out like a few months later, like, hey man, still waiting to do that podcast. And I knew he was doing other podcasts like before,
Yeah.
so he just was ignoring me, and I just go, no, go fuck yourself. I was just like, I don't care who you are, dude. Like people, if when you look at like famous people, yeah, it's cool to get someone that everybody knows, like a James Cameron, sure, but they're just fucking people. Like that,
Yeah, you're
there's no
right.
difference between you and them besides fame and a couple of fucking movies.
Yeah, there's a few $1 million sometimes, but what's
That's
money?
fucking
But no, I agree. And I've been around it my whole life. My dad is he works with sports and athletes. I've met Michael Jordan like so many times. Like I have so many Michael Jordan stories. It's crazy. Um, just and that's just more iconic of athletes that I've met and whatnot. But
Is he
they're
that bad of a guy though? I always hear really bad stuff.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, because he comes to my town for a fishing, the little whatever the White Marlin opening, and
Uh huh.
everyone's like, he's an asshole. I'm like, I actually thought he was Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson were the same person. And I was ready to, like, when my podcast first started, to ask him a bunch of questions about being the first guy in the NBA with AIDS. What was that like? And then someone was like, that's fucking Magic Johnson. I'm like, MJ. So the guy from Space Jam doesn't have AIDS. Like, all right,
Oh.
cool. Because I was going to go in there blind like that. I was going to be like, hey, what was it like to have AIDS? And then, like, see how that went.
No, it's you're right. They're just people, and I think trying to find a subject to talk about that they haven't been asked a million things about, for instance, like child actors, like, oh, you were in Goonies, and well, I was in other things too, like, or trying to find that, getting away from the main topic that, everybody's heard the same interview, everybody's heard the same questions, try to ask different questions, try to ask about their lives or whatever and get to know that person. And I think that's what kind of, separates people's podcasts from others. It's always like you try not to get starstruck. I've been starstruck a few times. Like I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to you. And but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm not stopping. We're gonna keep going, and as we build a brand, people come to us, and that's when you've made it. Is when people are sending you interview requests, like we want to come on your show, we want to bring on this actor, we want to bring this director. I'm like, oh yeah, we're actually booked up for this month, and I'm so appreciative. But we're gonna figure this out. So it's crazy, and the one thing, if I had to say something to people that are starting to do podcasting out there, don't give up, man. Just keep trying, because when you give up, then it's just you're not going to reap the benefits. If you keep, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
You really put that emphasis on there when you got closer to the microphone. It got louder. I was like, oh, he's really making sure people are listening right now.
Listen up, listen.
Well, Ken, where can
This is the
people
voice of God. Listen to me.
Ken, where can first of all, you're not Morgan Freeman.
No.
Now, but where can people find your show, Ken?
Well,
Where can people look at it at?
yeah, I just do it. Search it in the little Googles there. Google it up. It's Where the Scary Things Are. If you're a horror fan, it's a 2 hour show. We talk about new movies coming out, old movies that missed, and we always have a really great special guest on for a movie that's coming out or has came out and recent. We have a lot of fun. I drink a lot of beer, and it's YouTube as well. We do a live show. Join us on live stream too. Come chat with us. It's a fun chat room. We have like a really core following, and everybody gets on there. It's like family Tuesday night, and as we're doing the show, we're talking to them at the same time. So it's really wild. But it's a podcast we release every Monday, but the live show is on Tuesday. Also, if you're interested in sports, we do a Cover 3D podcast with a couple guys. I do it with a couple guys. One guy in Hawaii, one guy in California, then me in New Jersey. So we kind of cover three
That's
deep.
some
We
time
get it.
zones, bro.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out. But man, I can't thank you enough for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun just shooting the shit with you.
Well, thanks, man, for being on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast.